Good evening and welcome to the Smart Entrepreneurship Decoded show on Transcontinental Times. When I travel to large countries with huge startup ecosystems, especially India, Indonesia, America, UK, they're so caught up in in their own ecosystem, and some of them have large captive markets as well that they don't tend to notice other countries that are slowly creeping up on them. Next to India, we have Bangladesh with 170 million people. Now, compared to India, that looks small, but it is the 8th largest market in the world. Many Indians get shocked when they see the statistics and realize that the literacy rates in Bangladesh are higher, the per capita income is higher, the growth rate of the economy has been higher, the debt to GDP ratio is lower, and the macroeconomics are better managed. And recently, the Financial Express said for digital products and startups, it is an absolute digital gold mine. So how do we understand this country and what's happening there? One way to do that is to call somebody who's deeply entrenched in the ecosystem as an entrepreneur, investor, and generally as a thought leader. Join me in welcoming Mr. Fayaz Taher from Dhaka, Bangladesh. Welcome, Fayaz.
Hi, Nalin. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Speaking to you before the show, I was amazed at the number of things you have done. Now, as a serial entrepreneur, just walk us through just the richness of your experience across industries so that when we speak, people will understand that you come off certain background.
Thank you, Nalin. It's a great opportunity to be able to speak over here and share my thoughts. So I come from a family business background initially, worked in ready-made garments, but my passion has been clearly in tech. When I was young, around in high school, I started working we established a fast food restaurant, kind of like what KFC was. And that was kind of my first venture out. And then we did a few content-based technology businesses and mobile gaming, both on telco and social media, like platforms like Facebook. After that, once I came back to Bangladesh, I started a shoe factory, worked there. We were exporting about 20,000 pairs of shoes every day. But the issue is that I was always passionate about technology, and investments and startups. And so I invested in a few companies, which one of the first digital agency, Magneto Digital, and Bongo, which is where I'm working now as the chief operating officer. We're the largest streaming platform in Bangladesh. And during this time, established another company called Startup Dhaka, to help entrepreneurs succeed, both through finding funding, accelerating, and establishing one of the first accelerator program with the largest telco, but also giving mentorship and advice back as much as we can. And recently co-founded a edtech company called Upscale to help give more skills development in the country. So that's my experience.
You are also the president of the Thai Dhaka chapter.
Yes. I'm last year during the pandemic had the challenge of becoming the Thai chapter president over here, and it's been great meeting a lot of people across the world, and trying to again help flourish entrepreneurship and as much as we can here in Bangladesh.
So, what is the startup ecosystem in Bangladesh like? I mean, how many startups are we talking? What kind of incubators, accelerators, and the supporting network of investors? What does it look like from the top level?
So at the moment, if we talk about the startups, there's probably over 500 to 1,000 startups right now and founders who wanted in. When we first started the movement early in 2013, we started with a few events. The word startup didn't even exist. So now you talk about it, the founders, the parents of the founders, they're more encouraging because we have a very young demographic and population. And we didn't even have any accelerator programs or even angel investors. Now we have a Bangladesh Angel Network, which is one of the first angel network platform in Bangladesh. Then we have several VC funds who are over here and several accelerator programs as well, like the Green Phone Accelerator. So it's been quite fascinating of how things have evolved. And then the government established called Startup Bangladesh, which has done a fantastic job of incubating and providing seed funding at idea stage and encouraging. So it's been a fantastic development of the ecosystem in Bangladesh. And obviously, being next door to India, there's been a lot of spillover effects of how what's been happening over there. We've had a few companies raise substantial funding At the early stages, there were companies like Patao, Shohoj, and then obviously Bongo. We've raised quite substantial. But the latest one has been ShopUp. They got about $75 million from Peter Thiel's company Valor. So that's been a great testament to the growing market of Bangladesh. So,
yeah, so I see Bangladesh and India both. I think are opportunities for each other rather than anything else. For Bangladesh, there's this huge market across the border, and for India, if you look at the northeast and Bangladesh, it is a complete ecosystem and subset of its own, which a lot of people in the other parts of India don't understand how closely connected that whole ecosystem is, and how much business is actually done.
Yeah, it's amazing to see some of our companies from Bangladesh exporting from here, even like the food, like you look at Pran, they're doing a phenomenal job. And what's really interesting at Bongo, we can actually see people watching the Bengali content from Kolkata and the whole West Bengal, northeastern region. So it's quite fascinating that, the connections and the connectivity that there is and among the border and the trade that's happening. And I think they could flourish a lot more with because of the technology people can discover. And I think that's where technology comes in, and partnerships come in, and communications come in.
So I noticed that a lot of countries that have a young population or youngish population, India thinks it has a young population at an average of 28. I'm sitting in Indonesia at an average of 22, and I can see the difference even those average 6 years make in the velocity of digitization among the population. What is happening in terms of digitization of the population in Bangladesh?
It's really what's happened has been amazing. A couple of things and factors that I'll explain that's really helped. But the population, 51% of the population is under the age of 25, and 71% of the population is under the age of 40. We've had huge investments from the telcos for the 3G, 4G internets, and the government has invested a lot for broadband being spread throughout the country, and that's helped a lot. So that accessibility enabled people to use platforms like Facebook. Facebook was once known as the internet in Bangladesh, but now the internet has spread to pretty much, you've got TikTok, you've got Bongo, you've got all these Bioscope, all these platforms that people are using. And what's been phenomenal, and the biggest driver, I would say, are the mobile payment wallets like bKash and Nogo. People are sending, money across, and it's not just the young population. The older generation, nobody wants to touch cash now. Everyone wants to say, "Hey, I'll send you through bKash. I'll send you through Nogo." So I think, what the pandemic has done in Bangladesh and the impact is that what would have taken 4 or 5 years for users to learn and get educated, everyone learned how to send a payment, how to join a Zoom meeting, how to join a Google Meet, how to run virtually, or even a lot of online classes happen. So that has been amazing, and in terms of the adoption. So I think this country has been technology savvy, and what's also been very crucial are the prices of smartphones has been quite cheap. We had early companies like Symphony and then Samsung coming, and now the assembly is being done in Bangladesh. So that makes it affordable. So now you have also a primary market of brand new handset, but then you have a secondary market where people are saying, "Hey, I want to get a new handset now." And that handset is being afforded by someone else. So you would see even, the people who drive the three-wheeler rickshaw pullers, or they also sometimes have smartphones, and you would be surprised of their use. Yeah. So I think it's been amazing transformation in this country.
So when you look at some of these ecosystems, and it happened in India, Indonesia, a lot of other places as well, where the initial wave of founders of startups were people who were educated overseas, had seen the movie before in some other country, and came back to either replicate or innovate on the ideas. You yourself have been educated overseas. Just hearing you, one can say you've not lived or studied there. What drew you back, and what did you start with? And to take that further, currently in the startup ecosystem in Bangladesh, are there more people like you, or are locals also joining in?
So let me give you a great example. When we started the startup movement in 2013, we made a documentary called Startup Dhaka Documentary 1. And then a couple of years later, we made Startup Dhaka Documentary 2, which are both available on YouTube. There was a founder named Wasim, and he founded the first, along with Zia, they founded the first online grocery platform in Bangladesh called Chalda. He actually literally took our documentary and took it to one of the Silicon Valley investors and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is our country. Watch the documentary. And he got funding and he came back. Now they're doing amazing in terms of grocery and the development of what's happening. Like people don't think, well, hey, I need to go to the store. I can order on chaldal.com. So he studied in America. He came back. And there's more and more people doing the same thing. Hey, they saw our documentary or they're hearing about the news and they're coming back. Recently, another investor, Ankerless Rahat, who also studied in New York, came back now, giving back and investing in a lot of companies. So we have one of my partners who studied in Canada, came back and doing investments here, and he started a VC fund called IDLC VC Fund 1. It's a $5 million fund. So a lot of these people are starting to come back and they want to engage more and more with the local ecosystem. And that has also inspired and encouraged the young founders who are local over here to kind of say, hey, if they're doing it, we should also get into the bandwagon. And they're going for it. People are taking a lot more risks. People are starting a lot more companies. Nobody's thinking about, hey, I want to join a job now, especially in the young demographic. It's like, hey, technology company, if I have an idea, I can, there is some seed level of funding available. I can find a tech developer or a friend who's a great engineer and start. So I think that has, evolved over the last 6-7 years, and especially the successes in India. A lot of people are starting to see that. Even if you look at the grocery side, transport side, even like software as a SaaS, a lot of Bangladeshi companies are starting to do that. So I think part of us giving back over here and coming back and saying, hey, this is a great market, this is a testament, I think gives a lot of people confidence.
But are you seeing more domiciled people also stepping up now?
Yes, a lot more, much more. So it's both happening at the same time.
So for me, when I look at you, you are the classic serial entrepreneur, right? It's almost like an itch. You've done so many things one after the other. How do you think? What makes you tick to take so much risk, so much variability? You can easily sit back and have a cushier life after having done a few. What is driving you? Is it money? Is it obsession, passion? What is it?
I think it's my passion has been driven by learning. And I'm always like to learn new things and understand. And I've always looked at data and historical trends and people's behavior and how things evolve. I studied international development and social change in my master's program. And I just studied entrepreneurship in my undergraduate. Both of those things have sparked a curiosity. Is like, how do you help a country and an economy grow and develop the skills of the people? And one of the questions that I always ask is, why can't we do it? So if a country in the US or country in, someone's doing it in China, why can't we do the same thing? We have the same brain power, the same thought process. So that's how I kind of start. And then I look at the industries of where things can get disrupted. There's so many problems. Problems means opportunities, and that we can innovate. But the main goal is that how do we develop the workforce? And that's where the challenge is. And for me, when I see the market opportunities, I feel like, yes, this is a great idea. It has a great market. It's something worth solving the problem. And this will benefit a larger society or a larger portion of the country. And my biggest thing has been leading the way, lead change. When you start doing it, other people will start following. And the same way when we started with this whole startup ecosystem in Bangladesh, people laughed at us. I'm not kidding. I even had is like, hey, what are you investing in these startups for? But now the conversations have changed and said, hey, tell me which startup can I invest in? So it's that. And that's what I believe in, is creating change.
So now you also made a few investments. So let's talk a bit about that. When people approach you, most of the time they are absolute strangers, right? With stars in their eyes, valuation before value. What do you look for initially that will make you interested in speaking to them further? What is it that you look for in the first few seconds?
I look for their attention to detail and how much research and in-depth they go into solving the problem and understanding the problem. If they don't understand the problem better than me or more than me and can convince me that it is really a problem with facts, information, talking to customers, I don't think that, they're just coming for something. That's it. They just want to, it's like, hey, I just want to do a startup and this is what I want to do, and that's it. That's one of the first things. Number two, I try to understand their market research. is like, have they sized up the market? Do they really see the existing opportunities? A lot of these founders make a mistake on is that they typically say, oh, this company's raised this much money, I should go do it. I'll get this valuation, this and this and this. And I said, what about, how are the customers solving it now? If they don't know those simple things, then it's like, hey, this guy hasn't done enough research. So I try to look for founders who've gone really in depth, and also people who bring together a good team. I think that is fundamentally important, is that they realize is that they don't have the skill set to solve that problem, and they attract more skills. So I think that is important, because if you're not able to attract skills to help you build this business, then it's not going to be easy for you. And lastly, that I think what I think is important is sheer confidence. Like sometimes what I try to do is I'll push them and to see if they're confident, and if they have that enough gut, or say, hey, no, I'm doing this, you're wrong, I know this inside out. That's what I try to also look for, because you've got to have that level of confidence no matter how much people challenge you. And I think that is key, because that shows me is that, hey, you're passionate about it, you really want to solve this problem, and you're going to do everything that you can to be successful.
Interesting. I also hammer in similar things in my talks and books, that the number one thing I look for is knowledge. Do you know this subject better than me? And that is where a lot of people fail, because they are coming with copycat ideas or stuff where the train has already left the station years ago, and they're still excited about it. So it's interesting you say that as well. So now in Bangladesh, if looking at the ecosystem, what are the kind of companies that are being invested in? And are investors mostly from overseas, or you have a few local ones as well now?
Yeah, okay, so that's a fantastic question. Investments of startups are happening across the board: ed tech, health tech, media, streaming. You have transport. You have another like farming, agriculture. So it's across the board, which is a great, amazing thing that's happening. E-commerce is also growing. So I think that the whole base is being covered over here, because you can pretty much disrupt every industry because there's a problem. Now, in terms of investments, it's a mix of both. So we have some local VCs, Ideal CVC funds. They're one of the first registered VC. They've invested in quite a few, and they have a lot in the pipeline. And then you have the international VCs out of Singapore and also the US, who are actually looking at Bangladesh and investing. And I think what's happening now is that companies like ShopUp, Chalda, Bongo, or who are really out there with in the media and getting attention, it's helping to give investors confidence in the market over here, and I think that makes a huge difference. So I think we're going to see over the next couple of years a lot of investment take place, especially in great founders and great team. And Bangladesh is always going to be like a hidden gem. Like, people warm up to the idea. It's like, hey, this is not just a ready-made garments powerhouse. Like we have these tech startups coming up. We have these electronic assembly companies coming up. We're assembling TVs, fridge. I don't know if you heard a company named Walton. They're doing amazing. They have a great market share in Bangladesh. So I think people tend to forget that the market is fantastic, and international companies are actually here and making money. You look at the Unilevers, you look at the Telenors, they're all here. So sometimes it's just the image perception issue that we find.
Fantastic. Now, after all doing a lot of things in a lot of industries, you're right now into a completely different area. Talk us through how you got into this and what exactly are you doing?
Sure. Thank you very much. So two of my friends from high school, where I went over here to the American school in Bangladesh, they came up with the idea to do a streaming platform like Netflix. And that was back in 2014. And so when I heard of the idea, I actually invested as one of the first investors in the company. And over the years, I've helped advise and consult. But then what I saw was the data, the analytics data of how people were consuming and watching video, and especially live streaming. And that just opened up my eyes. And I said, no, this is a great opportunity. So now at Bongo, I'm the chief operating officer there. We're one of the largest streaming platform in the country. So we do basically we have our own software technology that we license to the different telcos. or other clients on video. We do the video delivery network in Bangladesh by co-hosting in different CDNs. And then we also manage content creators. We have over 500 partners in our network, and we close to drive about 1 billion views a month across our platform, Facebook, YouTube, and it's amazing to see like over 100 million watch time hours being watched, and we can see the type of content. So at Bongo now, we have a direct platform, OTT streaming, that we're making original content, bringing our partners, and our main number one goal is to enable content creators to make more money and enable more distribution so people can watch. And what's amazing is that one fact that I can share is we have a huge Argentina and Brazil fan in Bangladesh and base. Like during the Copa America, we saw a huge spike of probably one of the largest where it crashed our infrastructure because we didn't even imagine the final people coming and watching. So these things, I think, is giving me a lot of inspiration. Is that there's so much more. In the future, we're going to be helping to power ed tech, with our infrastructure and software. We're going to be looking at how can we do other things with it. So I think we have the capability. It's more about proving it to the West. Is like, hey, we're also over here, and globally, I think in the next couple of years we'll look to expand out of Bangladesh to like Nepal, India.
There's something interesting you said there, which is a lesson for budding entrepreneurs. That this idea was in 2014. We are talking about this in 2021. So after 7 years, it sounds like a great thing that's happened, and it has. And I commend you for that. But as an entrepreneur, most people think it's a much shorter game, right? They think 2-3 years now.
It's a long game. It's a long game, and it takes time.
It does. And I'm glad you mentioned that. So, but personally, for a serial entrepreneur like you, when you're onto a good thing like this, what is the end game? What does the end game look like? Is it valuation? Is it exit? Is it IPO? Is it treat it as a cash cow? Is it I'm here till I'm excited? What is it?
Our end game is really to create another opportunity for young Bangladeshis to make money as well, and especially creators, and then to inspire them by going global. Well, one of the things that we firmly believe is that we will create that pathway not just to be in Bangladesh, but in other countries and other emerging markets solving the same problem. And eventually that path will lead us to an IPO or a big exit at some point. But we're not driven by that money. We're driven by the passion of success and creating those opportunities for the content creators. And we think that we will be able to do that. And not just content creators, at some point, video commerce, enabling people to do shopping via video. So we really do think is that the end game is not even close. It's still like 10 years away. And the reason why we say that is because it's a patient business. You build as you go along. You look at the Googles, you look at the Facebook, you look at the Microsoft. It's an evolution and you evolve. And so I'm involved with a company that I'm very passionate about. And I think over time, we're going to, raise money. We're going to give shareholder value. We're going to give employee value. We're going to give, our customers value. And we're going to give, the country a value. And I think that's the way we think about it and how, as we build a company. And one thing that I passionately believe is you look at India, look at all the successful companies doing, large conglomerates. You look at Amazon, who's built multiple business sectors out of it. We, at some point in the future, will do something and separate our businesses out, but we'll always be involved with video.
So as you spoke, there were some very interesting points for budding entrepreneurs to note. One was, of course, sheer the time it takes, but some of the points you made were interesting. One, investors, when they value, they buy into the narrative, not just the financials and the statistics. And when you started answering the question, you first gave the storytelling narrative about the business and what drives you. And that is such an integral part of, selling the company or even projecting it to employees, clients, and various stakeholders. The other thing was about it being a patient business. Investors also need to have patient capital in many industries. Just as entrepreneurs have that very quick fix mindset, in early startup ecosystems, you tend to come across more investors like that also, who are more money lenders than investors, and they have a quick fix mindset, and then it doesn't help. But let's wrap up tonight with my final question to you. You are way too young, but still, If you cast your mind out 10, 15, 20 years ago and thought of retirement for a serial entrepreneur like you, what does that look like?
I don't think I can retire because my father was a serial entrepreneur as well, and that inclining continued throughout his life. So I think it's like a DNA built in my system and my brain. Even the Babson College where I went, it was also entrepreneurship. So even 15 years ago, 20 years ago, the DNA was kind of ingrained because my father used to take me to his businesses, be involved in the meetings, decision making. So I always wanted to be an entrepreneur and keep doing and solving problems. And number two, I'm actually inspired by a lot of the books that I read, which is very important, especially knowledge. And I always want to get more knowledge. So I think if I stop, that knowledge gaining will stop. And I don't want that. So I think for me, again, over the next 15, 20 years, I'll keep doing it, but it'll be in different capacities. Maybe not directly. I'll be mentoring, I'll be helping, or be involved in some way to constantly keep gaining knowledge, because I think that's the most important thing that we could do in our life. And then also enjoy life, with your family and kids, which is equally important. But it's that knowledge, that thirst for knowledge that drives me.
Fayaz, it has been an absolute delight to host you. Not just your knowledge on Bangladesh, etc., but many of the things that you speak of as an entrepreneur and the experiences will resonate very well with serious entrepreneurs or those who want to take it. I wish you the very best. Have a great night, and we'll stay connected. Thank you, Fayaz.
Thank you very much.